Rose Collector. I stood at the redwood doors near the entrance of the house. I don't really like opening these doors, as the one beside my lounge leads from the future, and its brother opposite leads to the past. You can imagine how much havoc beings who pass through these doors can cause. Nevertheless, Lucent Daxley has requested passage through my house. The era in which he pervades, human souls are fuel. One soul can power an entire city for a decade. Lucent was the head of First Light Corporation that purchased souls. As human numbers decreased and those that were left became less willing to sell their souls, First Light formed a regiment of Rose Collectors, soldiers that steal souls. Let's meet our guest and let him tell you about it. I opened the door to a realm that resembled the light at the end of the tunnel. It warmed me, beckoning. I stood fast, watching, and there it was. A rose appeared, mid-air, metal points leaking energy. A hint of red flowed through it, making its outline clear. The rose came towards me. Firing up, it reached the threshold and aimed at my heart. I would suggest you lower your hand before you lose it, Rose Collector, I said. An ethereal hand closed around the rose, extinguishing it. My apologies, Gatekeeper. You can never be sure these days. The being entered my home immediately, transformed into a tall man with a peppered beard in a grey suit. He could pass for an elder statesman. Hungry, I see. I smiled. Gone are the days where I was worshipped by millions and several souls were given to me as gifts. But you are aware of that, custodian of this house, Lucent said. This way, please. I gestured to the lounge. Lucent gave a stiff nod and followed me to the lounge. Mortimer was in his usual spot, next to the fireplace. Head on paws, he watched Lucent enter and sit down. Is the other deity here? Lucent said. I shook my head. Hamish will not be back for a while. What can I do for you, Lucent? I need passage to Decion. He must assist me in finding my daughter. I looked at Lucent. If he does not wish to be found, you are out of luck, I said. Oh, he'll get involved for her, Lucent said. He leaned back in the armchair and crossed one leg over the other and smiled. You are aware of the custom here. Begin at the first rose you collected. Or should I say, stole. I kept my eyes on Lucent. Despite your lack of grace towards my kind, I will tell you of how I came about stealing the souls of a young man who was destined to be a powerful world leader. It was by accident, really. First Light was attacked by Zemcroft collectors. They cut through us like a hot knife through butter. One of our own had betrayed us. Lal, my daughter, was taken. I managed to get out. Landed in the Himalayas. I needed a carcass badly. Time was running out. If I remained in ethereal form, I'd be pulled back into the abyss. So I found a young lieutenant with a mountain leader troop. Lucent rotated his hand. In it, a translucent rose formed, with an outline of a red shimmer. His fingertips glowed as he manipulated its energy. I managed to take this from one of the Zemcroft collectors. First Light collectors emit a dark blue glow, as ours is fueled by a blend of the soul and dark energy. Zemcroft collectors, well, their rose is tipped the other way. They move more towards the red side of the spectrum. Would you like to taste what it is like being trapped in one of these, Gatekeeper? Energy around Mortimer crackled. My eyes on Lucent. I dare you, I said. This flimsy thing could not hold you. Do not feel threatened, Lucent said. I kept my gaze on Lucent's eyes. The grey hue in them flickered in response to the flames from the fireplace. Slam, the first soldier I saw. I rammed at his chest. Rotating my index finger and ring finger, the rose activated, shimmering through his carcass. gleam, it sucked his soul into the device. The soldier fell to the ground, lifeless. He was grey. I turned to his troop to find them staring at me, mouths agape. They opened fire, but what good are bullets against an ethereal being who can drop in and out of dimensions? They fought valiantly, but they were simply outmatched. Within minutes, I'd collected 120 of the troop. Their carcasses, all grey, laid on the snow. I brimmed with power. I thought I had got all of them, but a further 5 soldiers ran towards me, one threw a grenade. It boomed, dislodging snow beneath us. They were desperate, I guess. We slid down, blocks of snow that felt like cement crashed around me as I fell. The soldiers fell with me. Crack, stopped eventually, followed by tiny crackles and whistles as the snow settled a few miles below. I was deep beneath it. With me, a soldier. Guess which one? Lucent smiled. Lucent Daxley was trapped beneath a ton of snow. It was crushing him slowly. As for me, the avalanche caught me by surprise. But what can material energy do to an ethereal being? It just tickles as it rolls around you. I was brimming, as I just fed. Lucent kept his eyes on the flames. You must understand, I do not wish him harm, but I needed to hide, as a soul reaping would flag on Zemcroft's radar, and they would be looking for me. I was outnumbered and outmatched, so I edged closer to Lucent Daxley. He was dying anyway. I flicked my fingers and activated the rose. I shoved it through his torso. The energy shimmered as it sucked his soul into the device. Mostly, I used the device to power me, but with a further manipulation of settings, I redirected the soul to myself and slammed it against my torso. I changed shape into what you see before you, or rather, a much younger version of this man. Needless to say, I went on to be head of the First Light Corporation that made billions around the world. You kept this form, I said. Lucent smiled. I have enjoyed it much. This material energy allows interaction, the touch of a loved one's hand, taste of a good lager, eyes that can only see a certain spectrum. I would marvel at great works of art. You could not do that if you dwelled in a place where stars are formed. I had seen too much. A painter's work was incomparable. I experienced a moment between souls that resonates deep within. You could not do that if you knew all is eternal and you were never apart. It is the finite, the notion that your life will end. This is the place where you can dream of love, to see beyond the veil, to aspire to go beyond the rim. That's why I choose to remain in this form. Its vulnerability makes me feel alive. I shook my head. I looked at Mortimer. He had his eyes on the flames in the fireplace. He was bored too. I smiled to myself. Let me show you to your door, I said. I got up. Lucent stood, upright, a soldier. He followed me as I turned left out of the door and stopped at the door he had come through. There must be a mistake. I shook my head. I need to see Dekion. I shook my head again. Mortimer had come and stood beside me. He watched Lucent. Slam. Lucent ignited the metal clippings attached to his fingertips against my heart. A rose formed, sucking my essence. I was told that you are obstinate, gatekeeper, so I came prepared to do what I must. I felt my essence leaving me, pulled towards the device. I looked at Mortimer, who simply watched me. I flicked my fingers, focusing, igniting blue fire between them. They blazed blue as I created an ethereal rose. Whack! I shoved it into Lucent's heart. No time to mess around. Rotating and shifting, I filled my rose with his essence. He drained. I watched him, He drained some more. I watched him. I kept pulling his essence into my hand. I stopped when he was but a wisp, stood in front of me. How? Without a device, Lucent said. I rotated my fist, wrapping Lucent's soul in my hand. I stood there, watching his soul pulse. It's not a feeling I enjoy, but I cannot permit him entrance to the past. You forgot Kali. Time. We are all limited by her, with the exception of the Mighty One, whose temple looms above us. Things are a little slower for beings like you, but the experience is no different than that experienced by Lieutenant Daxley, whose lifespan would have been 61 years. Go home, Rose Collector. Dekion has asked that I refuse all those who want to find him. I opened the door and tossed the soul back into the light. He formed back into the Elder Statesman. This will not go unchecked, Gatekeeper, Lucent said. I nodded and closed the door, shutting him out. Mortimer looked at me and shook his head. I agree, old friend. Delusions of grandeur. I went back into the lounge and sat down. Mortimer took his usual spot on the rug next to the fireplace. There is always a bigger monster. That was Divine Mother's first instruction to me. It is her way of telling me that we all suffer the same illusions. The only difference is our lifespans. A love story between deities can last millennia, whereas one between mortals may just about last 70 years. Lucent Daxley thought himself a god for being forged by millions of souls. He stole them. He did not earn their love. Had he done that, it would have been a little different. As for Dekion, he's an avatar of the Mighty One. He saved me in the Abyss, and he had instructed me to prevent all those that follow him. He's my friend, and I owe him. Consider it done, I told him, when I was in the Abyss. He was the one who showed me how to forge a rose in my palm without a device. Why a rose collector? Why not just a soul hunter? The question I asked my wife Keely. She showed me why. If you stand back and gaze at a soul, its essence that is deep within the glow of its sphere, it looks like a rose. That's why. How romantic is that? Until next time, stay safe. Don't die in your sleep. Godspeed.